Have you ever woken up in the morning with a weight on your chest before the day even began? Not the kind of weight you can touch, but one that lives inside your mind. You get up, you go through the motions, you put on your clothes, maybe even a smile, but deep down there's a quiet ache. It feels like your life isn't entirely yours. Like every move you make is secretly being watched, judged, measured. You don't need anyone to say it out loud. You feel it. The pressure to be the good one, the reliable one, the one who never disappoints. It's exhausting, isn't it? Carl Jung believed this exhaustion has a name. He called it the persona, the mask we put on to survive in the world. And we all have one. It's not bad in itself. The mask helps us function, lets us fit in. But the danger is when we forget there's someone beneath the mask, a deeper self quietly suffocating. You feel it when you're at work, nodding along to things you don't agree with. You feel it when you say yes to friends, even though every fiber of your being wants to say no. You feel it when you smile, while your heart wants to scream. That tension, that invisible tug-of-war, is the price of living for approval. Think about it. Why do we say yes when our soul says no? Because somewhere deep inside we've come to believe that rejection equals death, that if we disappoint someone, we'll be abandoned. It's an old fear, ancient, one carried from childhood when love often felt conditional. And so we adapt, we play the role, we rehearse our lines. But every performance drains a little more of our life energy until we start to forget what our true voice even sounds like. Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Yet most people spend decades avoiding that very privilege. Why? Because it feels safer to be accepted as someone you're not than to be rejected as who you are. That's the trap. That's the cage. And it's why so many people walk through life with silent anxiety, a gnawing emptiness they can't explain. Imagine a marionette on strings. It dances beautifully, but every movement is controlled by invisible hands. At first, it doesn't notice. It feels proud of how smooth the dance looks. But one day, it catches a glimpse of itself in a mirror, and there behind the polished smile, it sees the strings. It realizes, I have never moved freely. I have never lived as me. That moment is terrifying, but it's also the beginning of awakening. Because once you see the strings, you can no longer pretend they aren't there. And maybe you've already had glimpses like that. A quiet thought before bed that whispers, "This isn't who I really am." A wave of sadness after a conversation where you felt unheard. The pang of guilt when you betrayed your own truth just to keep the peace. These small cracks in the mask are not failures. They are signals. They are your soul tapping you on the shoulder, saying, "Please, don't forget me." Today, I want to guide you through this hidden maze. Together, we'll look at why we accepted the mask, why approval feels like oxygen, and how to slowly cut the strings without collapsing. This isn't about destroying your relationships or running away from society. It's about stepping into a deeper kind of freedom, the kind that lets you stand without apology, breathe without fear, and walk without strings. Jung called this individuation. I call it the quiet miracle of becoming whole. But before we step onto that path, we need to understand something important. We need to ask a question that unlocks everything. If the mask is so heavy, so exhausting, so painful to wear, why did we put on in the first place? Carl Jung gave a name to this mask we wear every single day. He called it the persona. Think of it as a carefully crafted face we present to the world, polished enough to be accepted, controlled enough to avoid rejection. Without it, we wouldn't know how to function in society. It's what lets you be professional at work, polite with strangers, adaptable with family. The persona is like a uniform. It signals to others how they can relate to you. In many ways, it keeps life running smoothly. But here's the danger. When you forget it's just a mask, you risk mistaking it for your entire identity. That's when the trouble begins. Imagine an actor who never leaves the stage. At first, the performance is thrilling, the applause intoxicating. But what happens when the lights go out and the actor can't remove the costume? What happens when he no longer remembers his real name, his own voice, his own reflection? He has lived so long in borrowed roles that the boundary between self and performance dissolves. And that's exactly what happens to us when the persona becomes our prison. Think about the times you smiled while something inside you was breaking. Or the moments you nodded in agreement while your chest tightened with protest? How often have you said yes with your lips when every fiber of your being wanted to shout no? Each of these moments is an echo of the same truth. The persona has stepped in front of the real you, and the longer this continues, the more the mask fuses to your skin. On the surface, everything may look fine. You seem calm, competent, put together. But underneath, there's a gnawing emptiness, a quiet ache that says, this is not all of me, and that ache grows louder with time. It becomes anxiety, exhaustion, even physical illness. Why? Because a soul cannot thrive when it's trapped behind plastic smiles and scripted lines. The persona was meant to serve you, but somewhere along the way, you began serving it. Jung saw this everywhere. In patients who played the perfect parent while secretly drowning in loneliness. In businessmen who wore confidence like armor but confessed in private to feeling like frauds. In women who were admired by everyone but admitted they hadn't felt truly seen in decades. The persona is not evil, it is necessary. But when it becomes the whole story, it steals your wholeness. Picture a mask hanging on a wall. It was designed for ceremonies, for specific moments. But now imagine someone deciding to glue it to their face permanently. At first, others applaud the consistency. But behind the mask, the person begins to suffocate. They scratch at their skin, desperate for air. That is a tragedy of living only as persona. You can't breathe as yourself, only as a role. And yet, we often offend our masks fiercely. Why? Because they protect us. The persona shields us from judgment, gives us a sense of belonging, makes us feel safe. But that safety comes at a high cost. The cost is your authenticity. The cost is that subtle grief of not being known, not even by yourself. This is why so many people live with an invisible fatigue. They can't explain why they're tired, because they've followed every rule. They've achieved what society told them would bring happiness, success, family, respect, yet something is missing. That something is the self buried beneath the mask. And the longer it's buried, the more restless it becomes. So the question is not whether we need a persona. We do. The question is, are you wearing the mask, or is the mask wearing you? Are you guiding the role, or has the role swallowed you whole? Because when the persona dominates everything, when it becomes the only face you know, the cost is devastating. But what exactly happens when persona takes full control and locks away your soul? At first, the mask feels harmless. It makes life smoother. It helps you get the job, maintain the friendship, avoid conflict. But slowly, something hidden begins to happen. Day after day, the mask stops being something you wear and becomes something that wears you. This is the hidden mechanism Jung warned about. And it's not abstract. It's happening in your everyday life. Think about your workplace. How many times have you agreed to tasks that drained your energy, not because they align with your purpose, but because you didn't want to disappoint? You smiled, nodded, said, "Of course, I'll handle it," even when inside you felt a quiet scream. Or think about your relationships. How often have you swallowed your truth just to keep the peace? You wanted to say, "This hurts me," but instead you whispered, "It's fine." And later, when you were alone, that phrase echoed like a lie in your chest. This is the mechanism of the persona in action. It's like a mirror that only reflects what others want to see. And after staring at that reflection for too long, you begin to believe it's all you are. You forget the depth, the complexity, the wild beauty of your true self. Instead, you become a carefully edited version, built to survive but not to thrive. Jung described in simple but piercing words, "He who looks outside dreams. He who looks inside awakens." We spend so much time looking outward, seeking approval, applause, validation, that we fall asleep to the world within, and in that sleep, the mask grows heavier. You wake up one day realizing you built an entire life out of other people's expectations. And here's where it gets darker. Because the mask doesn't just hide your pain, it hides your desires too. The real passions, the real dreams, the real voice inside you is silenced. You begin to mistake silence for peace, avoidance for love, compliance for purpose. But beneath the surface, a storm brews. That storm often shows up as anxiety you can't explain, exhaustion that coffee can't fix, loneliness even in crowded rooms. Picture a clock whose hands are stuck at the same hour. From the outside, it still looks like a clock, but inside it has lost its function. It no longer tells the truth of time. That's what happens to us when we live only through persona. We still look functional, even admirable, but deep down we know we're stuck. The mechanism steals movement, steals life. And here's the cruelest part. The more you serve the mask, the more invisible you feel. You become known for being dependable, agreeable, successful, but rarely known for being yourself. The applause feels hollow because they're clapping for performance, not for you. And that hollowness grows until you start to wonder, will anyone ever know the real me? Will I ever know the real me? This is why people who seem to have it all still cry in secret. This is why those who are loved by everyone often confess to feeling unknown. The persona offers comfort on the outside, but chains you on the inside. And every time you betray your truth for approval, the chain tightens. At first, the cost seems small, a bit of fatigue, a touch of anxiety. But over time, this hidden mechanism corrodes the soul. It turns vibrant, unique lives into copies of copies. And the longer it remains unseen, the harder it is to escape. You may wonder, is this really so dangerous? After all, isn't just the way life works? Isn't it normal to adapt? Yes, adaptation is part of life. But when adaptation becomes identity, when survival becomes the only story, something precious dies within. And here lies the loop, the tension we cannot ignore. What happens if we never question this mechanism? If we keep letting the mask control us? If we keep confusing approval with worth? There's a hidden danger waiting in that path, one that Jung saw clearly and warned us about. The question is, what is the true cost of never taking off the mask? When you live only to meet the expectations of others, something quiet but devastating begins to unfold. It doesn't happen all at once. It's slow, almost invisible, like a candle burning down without you noticing. But over the years, the flame of your soul weakens. You wake up one morning and realize you don't recognize the person staring back at you in the mirror. The smile is there, carefully practiced, but the eyes, they're dim, tired, almost hollow. It's not depression in the clinical sense. It's a deeper fatigue, the exhaustion of a life that has been lived for everyone except you. This is a dangerous consequence of never questioning the mask. You begin to vanish inside your own life. On the surface, you look fine, maybe even successful. You build a career, raise a family, earned respect. But inwardly, there's a chronic emptiness, a sense of drifting, a constant whisper that says, you don't belong here. You don't belong anywhere. Jung saw this pattern in countless lives. People who seemed accomplished, yet admitted to feeling like ghosts. They played their roles so well that they forgot their real lines. Life became a stage, endless performances under pressure of invisible spotlights. But what is a play without an audience? Eventually, even the applause fades, and all that's left is an actor who has forgotten his own name. The loss of identity is not just emotional, it's spiritual. When the mask dominates everything, you no longer feel anchored. You lose the thread that ties you to meaning. And that's why so many people, even with full calendars and busy lives, confess to feeling profoundly alone. The loneliness isn't because there's no one around. It's because the self that longs for connection has been buried. Think of a tree cut off from its roots. It may stand tall for a while, looking strong, but without nourishment it begins to dry from the inside out. Leaves fall, branches weaken, and eventually the tree is just a shell. That's what happens to us when we trade authenticity for approval. We may keep standing, but life stops flowing through us. And this inner drought leads to more than sadness. It leads to isolation. Because how can others truly connect with you if the person they meet is only a performance? They may love your mask, admire your role, depend on your reliability, but deep down, you know they don't know you. And so the heart aches with a paradox. Surrounded by people, yet unseen. Left unchecked, this path can spiral into burnout, bitterness, even despair. You can achieve everything the world celebrates and still feel like nothing is enough. Because the applause never reaches the hidden self. The applause is for the character, not the soul. and your soul knows the difference. But here's the turning point. Jung didn't stop at describing the tragedy. He believed that even in the darkest moments, the self is not destroyed, it's only hidden, like embers beneath ashes, waiting for breath. The good news is there's a way back. The authentic self can be recovered. The process is not about throwing away your life or abandoning everyone you love. It's about remembering, piece by piece, the forgotten parts of who you are. And this path doesn't begin with a dramatic revolution. It doesn't require you to quit your job, move the mountains, or shout your truth from rooftops. Jung discovered something surprising. The journey back to authenticity often starts with the smallest of steps. And that path, that first step, may be far simpler than you expect. Jung called the path of liberation individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, not who you were told to be, not who you perform to be, but the deeper, unshakable self that has been waiting all along. He described it as the most profound and necessary journey of the human soul. And while it may sound abstract, it begins with steps so human, so practical, that anyone can take them. The first step is recognition. You cannot change what you cannot see. Recognition means finally noticing the mask you wear and admitting it's there. It's the moment when you pause and whisper, "I've been living for approval more than for truth." Recognition is not about shame. It's about honesty. It's like looking into a mirror and, for the first time, noticing cracks. Painful, yes, but also the beginning of freedom. The second step is integration. This is where you face what Jung called the shadow, the parts of yourself you've hidden or denied, the anger you swallowed, the fears you suppressed, the desires you buried. Integration doesn't mean acting out every impulse. It means saying, "This too is part of me." When you stop pretending the shadow doesn't exist, it loses its power to control you from the dark. Imagine lighting a candle in a room you've avoided for years. At first, the dust and cobwebs scare you. But with time, you see it's just another room in your house, waiting to be cleaned and used. The third step is conscious action. This is where the theory becomes practice. Instead of reacting automatically, saying yes when you mean no, lashing out when you feel small, you begin to pause. You choose. This pause is small but revolutionary. It gives you the space to write your own script. Conscious action is not about being perfect. It's about being intentional. Each choice, no matter how small, becomes a thread weaving you back to your authentic self. And the fourth step is legacy. This is the fruit of individuation, a life that reflects your essence. Legacy is not just what you leave behind after death. It's the atmosphere your presence creates today. It's the feeling people have when they're around you, that you are real, grounded, alive. Legacy is a quiet power of knowing your life is no longer performance, but a testimony. These four steps, recognition, integration, conscious action, and legacy, sound grand, but they're lived in micro moments. The pause before you answer. The courage to write in a journal what you truly feel. The decision to sit in silence for 5 minutes and listen to your soul. The strength to say not today without drowning in guilt. These are not just exercises, they are seeds. And like seeds, they may seem small at first, but with time, they grow into forests of freedom. Imagine planting those seeds each day. At first, the ground looks unchanged, but slowly, roots dig deep, shoots break through the soil, and one day you stand beneath a tree that began with a single act of courage. That is individuation, not a one-time event, but a steady unfolding, a return to wholeness. And yet, even in this sacred journey, there are traps along the way, subtle snares that can pull you off course if you're not careful. Because freedom is not only about what you embrace, it's also about what you avoid. And those traps, those dangerous illusions, are the next truths we must face. Every journey of transformation carries hidden traps, and the path of individuation is no different. Jung warned that when we begin to break free from people's expectations, new dangers appear, subtle, seductive, and easy to miss. It's like walking across a fragile bridge suspended over a canyon. Each step must be taken with awareness, because even one careless move can send you back into the old patterns you fought so hard to escape. The first trap is ego inflation. After finally touching your authenticity, it's tempting to confuse truth with superiority. You start to think, I'm more awake than others. I see what they can't see. But this is not freedom. It's just another mask. Ego inflation turns authenticity into arrogance, and the self into a performance again. The line between pride and presence is as thin as a shadow at dusk. Cross it, and you lose what you gained. The second trap is isolation. Once you taste the joy of being real, you may feel frustrated with the world of mass around you. The temptation is to withdraw completely, to reject everyone as inauthentic. But individuation is not about building walls. It's about building bridges. Freedom is not found in cutting off from life, but in reconnecting to it with honesty. If you mistake solitude for superiority, your growth will wither in loneliness. The third trap is the savior complex. When you awaken, it's natural to want to rescue others from their masks. You want to shout, "Take yours off too. Live free." But in doing so, you risk losing yourself again. Because living to fix others is just another performance, a noble one, but still a mask. Transformation cannot be forced on anyone. Your task is not to save, but to embody, to let your life become an invitation, not a command. And the fourth trap is regression. The path is not linear. There will be days when the mask feels safer, when the old roles call you back. In those moments, it's easy to slip into familiar patterns, smiling when you want to cry, nodding when you want to scream. Regression is part of the journey, but the danger is believing it means you failed. It doesn't. It only means you must begin again with gentleness and awareness. Think of it this way. Authenticity is like learning to walk on a rope bridge. Each plank creaks, each step shakes, but you keep moving. If you stumble, it doesn't mean you were never meant to cross. It only means you must rise and continue one step at a time. These traps remind us that freedom is delicate. The difference between arrogance and authenticity, between connection and isolation, between helping and losing yourself is subtle, like the line between shadow and light at sunrise. That's why awareness is everything. Without it, the bridge collapses. With it, every step becomes stronger. And here's the miracle. When you learn to walk past these traps, when you move through the snares without being caught, something extraordinary begins to unfold. And here we arrive at the turning point, the quiet miracle of rebirth. It doesn't come with applause or fireworks. It comes like a seed breaking through the soil, unnoticed by the world, but carrying within it the power to transform everything. After years of bending, pleasing, and performing, you begin to realize something radical. You no longer need to live for approval. The mask that once felt glued to your skin starts to loosen. You breathe deeper. You stand taller. And in that breath, in that new posture, a truer self emerges. The cracks in your story don't vanish. The pain, the mistakes, the disappointments remain part of you. But instead of being marks of shame, they become windows for light. Imagine a shattered mirror reorganized into a stained glass window. The pieces are still broken, yet together they form something more beautiful, more luminous than before. That's what happens when you allow authenticity to replace approval. Your wounds no longer hide you. They illuminate you. And in that light, others find permission to be real too. This is the gift of individuation. You don't just free yourself. You become a living example of freedom. People around you sense it. They see it in your eyes, hear it in your voice, feel it in your presence. Without words, you invite them to drop their masks as well. Your authenticity becomes a quiet revolution, one heart at a time. And here lies a simple but profound truth. You don't need to be perfect to be free. You only need to be willing to live as yourself. To take the small daily actions, pausing before you answer, writing down your truth, saying, "Not today," when your soul needs rest. These little choices stack up until one day you look back and realize you are no longer a puppet on strings. You are walking your own path, steady, whole, alive. The moral of this entire journey is clear and unforgettable. Freedom begins the moment you drop the mask. If this message spoke to you, I invite you to write in the comments, "I choose my peace." And if your heart longs to go deeper, join me in the next video, where we'll explore how to integrate your shadow without fear, so that the light within you can shine even brighter.